All right. Good morning, everybody. Again, this is Pat Swain from the Thompson Agency. Thank you, everybody, for joining our monthly webinar. Today, we're going to be discussing an executive benefit strategy called split dollar. And so, this is something that a lot of advisors cringe when they hear for fear of the unknown. But I still think it's a very effective strategy for providing key employees with either retirement benefits or key death benefits. So again, we're going to go ahead and get started. We'll have questions for the end, and I hope this is beneficial for everybody on the line. Bear with me a second. My apologies. So again, we're going to talk about the executive benefit spectrum and specifically split dollar. So I think a good way to get started on this strategy is by looking at a executive benefit control spectrum. So we're going to look at three different strategies and how they compare. Two of which you're probably more familiar with. And so shown here are going to be three different strategies. Number one, executive bonus. And number two, 409A deferred compensation. So in the past, deferred compensation was heavily used for highly paid employees. The issue there is that it's expensive to administer, and whatever vehicles are used to informally fund it belong to the corporation. So if the corporation goes under, you as the employee stand in line as a creditor behind other creditors. So we all know that what happened with Enron and the key employees who were aware of what was going on and got out with their policies, leaving kind of the lesser key employees, in the dark, and they didn't have anything to show for it. So that was a key example of what can happen with deferred comp. Still a great plan, but there's definitely some flaws to it, and it is very expensive, and it leaves almost all control in the hands of the employer. Also, any benefits received with deferred comp are taxable to the employee, including the death benefit. Remember, it's a corporately owned policy with deferred comp. So on the other end of the spectrum, you have the executive bonus strategy. So the employee owns the policy here. We did a previous webinar on this. They can walk away with the policy anytime they want. The benefits to the employer there, they get a deduction on the front end as they pay premium, but they lack control. So, there's pros and cons to each of these strategies, and not saying that those won't fit. But again, to recap, deferred comp control with the employer, employee control with executive bonus. And so this is where split dollar is going to fall right in the middle. And specifically with a supplemental retirement planning objective in mind, loan regime split dollar. So that's what we're going to discuss today. And I think you're going to see the value and why this can make sense for some of your clients. So in addition to loan regime, we will discuss endorsement split dollar. These are the main two types of split dollar arrangements, and I'll show you where both could make sense. So first of all, what is a split dollar insurance plan? Well, first of all, I'm going to tell you what it's not. It's not a type of insurance policy. It's not an insurance plan. It is really just an arrangement that allocates life insurance policy benefits, and in some cases, premium costs between an employer and a valued employee. So this is an agreement. It can be a simple document. Again, not as complicated to administer as deferred comp, but there should be a legal document stating, the employer will be responsible for paying the premium. They'll recoup premiums paid via the policy death benefit, and the remaining cash value above premiums paid will belong to the employee. And we'll go over specifically how that looks on an example. So the employer assists one or more selected key employees to purchase needed life insurance protection by paying all or a portion of premiums. Most of the time, they're paying all the premiums with these split dollar arrangements. And the employer will recover their interest from the policy benefits, as I mentioned. So what value are you providing with split dollar to the employee? Well, the life insurance death benefit is tax-free with split dollar, unlike the death benefit of deferred comp. And this comes at a reduced cost, which we will discuss briefly how that cost is calculated later in the presentation. The other benefit is that the employee can have an interest in the policy's cash value during his or her working years, unlike deferred comp. So because split dollar is an unqualified plan, key employees can reap the benefit of this strategy while the rank and file don't have to be covered. So it's unqualified. You don't have to, there's no safe harbor requirements like there is with 401k. So split dollar can also be used to either provide death benefit or cash value is the main goal, or both. So that will help determine whether loan regime split dollar or endorsement split dollar is used. So now we've seen how this strategy helps a key employee. Let's see why an employer would want to use it. So with split dollar, the employer has the flexibility to determine how much interest they will recapture from policy benefits. So that doesn't have to be a predetermined formula. There's a lot of flexibility in how much of the benefits they want to recover. Employer has the flexibility to discriminate, as I just mentioned, who will participate. And they also have a level of control they would not have with executive bonus. And I think one of the most important things here is you want to retain, and not mention here, but reward your key employees. So this could help, especially in fields where you have professionals, where retaining key talent is so important, and you could lose a key employee to a competitor that nobody ever wants to, you never want to lose a key employee. That could mean a drop in value of your business. So let's look at the types of split dollar plans. Number one, let's look at endorsement split dollar. So with endorsement split dollar, this is where a key employee might need some additional life insurance. So it's used primarily for death benefit only plans. So it's funded with a permanent policy, but at below term cost to the employee. So if this would be cheaper than the employee going out and buying a term policy in most cases, almost in all cases. This is because the rule is that economic benefit rates are 1-year term costs for the death benefit that's assigned to the key employee is what's used for determining how much they're going to be taxed on. So this can create a huge savings to that key employee. Also, the employee has the option of keeping the policy once they leave, albeit they'd have to cover the remaining premiums. So huge benefit while they're working, and obviously they have the flexibility to keep the policy once they retire. However, they would have to either pay back premiums paid, or if the employer forgave the premiums, they would be taxed on all those premiums that were paid while they worked. So with endorsement split dollar, the employer owns the policy, and they're just endorsing a specific death benefit to the key employee's beneficiary. And it doesn't have to be in the entire death benefit. The employer could choose to recapture premiums paid, or even keep more for key man insurance. So we've covered endorsement split dollar for death benefit plans. We'll go through an example in a second. But what about the more common need of supplemental retirement planning? Because let's face it, most people, when they're at their employer and they're looking for an additional benefit, they want a living benefit. Life insurance, as we know, can create tax-free income. But what about taking on some of that cost as an executive benefit for that key employee? So that's where loan regime split dollar is going to, fill that need. So with the split dollar loan regime, the employee is going to own the life insurance policy. They're going to name a personal beneficiary, and they're going to assign the policy as collateral to the employer. So the employee is the owner, but there's an assignment. So similar to having an assignment if there's a policy taken out for a loan. So the loan is always a moving target as you pay it down. With this, the policy will be assigned equal to premiums paid. So at employee's death, if they died during the working years, let's say, before rollout, the employer would receive a portion of the death benefit equal to their interest, which is premiums paid. And each year, when the premium is being paid to the insurance carrier by the employer, it's treated as a loan to the employee. And I should say, each year when that premium is paid and treated as a loan, there's a 7872 rate, which is determined by the IRS, and it's currently 1.09%. So, that's going to make this strategy attractive right now because interest rates are low. It's actually been lower over the last few years, but it's always best to assume some variation, some variability in that rate because it's been much higher in the past. So continuing on with loan regime, because I think this is probably the benefit that more of you will come across. There's so much flexibility in regards to how the loan gets repaid and what the client will do with the policy once in retirement. So the loan can be forgiven with the employee expected to pay taxes, or the loan can be repaid in full to the employer. So either way, policy values can be used to keep that net out-of-pocket cost to zero. So we'll go through an example in a second, where the entire loan is paid back from the policy. So in addition, the key employee can choose what they want to do with the policy in retirement. They could take level income tax-free distributions, from age 66 and beyond, let's say. They could take large distributions in years where their other assets had a downturn. Just lots of options here, lots of flexibility. This is a common word I keep using here, but it really is versus deferred comp, where all the client's getting is a guaranteed income stream from the employer. Still a good thing, but highly costly and a lot more administration too. So let's look at an example of a flow chart of how it works. So looking at this example, we have a business and a key employee entering into a split dollar arrangement. The business is going to agree to pay max funded premiums into either a whole life or IUL plan, most common, to the insurance carrier. And then there'll be an assignment equal to premiums paid with the loan regime back to the business. Now, also, it shows that the key employee could have a share of the premiums. That is an option. But obviously, that makes the strategy less attractive, and it's not very common. And each year, whether it's loan regime or endorsement, there's going to be income tax due. In loan regime, it's going to be income tax due on the imputed interest. So you pay in a $10,000 premium, the employer does, and let's just say the interest rate is 1%. Well, there's going to be a tax on $100. Remember, they're not paying the actual interest. They could, but most of the time the loan is just being forgiven in that year. The employer receives an income tax deduction, and the employee is responsible for paying the tax. With that economic benefit or endorsement split dollar, they're taxed on the economic benefit or one-year term rate if the carrier has one-year term rates, at their income tax bracket. So it keeps the cost down to the employee, keeps control with the employer because they're going to recoup some of the benefits at death or, via policy cash value. And it's, again, it's just a lot of flexibility, a lot of things you can do with this. But I think you'll have a better understanding once we go through an example. So here's loan regime in action. Here we have a 45-year-old male who's a key employee of a corporation, an employer who would like to keep him around, and the 401k is not providing enough incentive. So, he might be making over $200,000 a year, and putting away $18,000 per year is just not enough. That's not going to make up the shortfall he's going to have in his retirement plan. So the employer and employee decide to enter into a split dollar agreement where the employer will pay $20,000 into either a whole life or IUL that is max funded. And the employee's costs will be on the tax, the tax on the imputed interest each year. And the corporation can leave that rollout agreement flexible. So that's at retirement. They either choose to forgive the loan, all those premiums paid, or they can recoup everything they paid into the policy. But the great part is, assuming the policies perform well, you can use the policy cash values to pay back the employer. So here's a sample design. Here's $20,000 being paid into a max funded policy over 15 years. And this is an IUL, but assuming it could be whole life, assuming a 6.39% rate of return, there'd be plenty of cash value to repay the loan at retirement age 65. So we could see $300,000 being paid in, $300,000 being taken out of the policy. See zero outlay though at age 65. And I'm sorry, this uses beginning of year age, but that is age 65 on the product illustration. Zero outlay. So over those 20 years, the employee only paid in or paid $25,000 to the IRS. They pay back to the employer $300,000 from the policy and are still left with $279,000 in cash in the policy, even after paying back the $300,000, with $407,000 of total net death benefit. So let's go ahead and just recap this strategy. But I just find this, it's just a great way to keep control with the employer, reward the key employee, keep costs down, and the rate of return to the employee versus, what they're getting versus what they're paying is just tremendous. So employer was able to retain the key employee. The employer recouped their full cost at an employee's retirement. No discrimination rules, no high cost of administration, more control than executive bonus. And what did the employee receive? They received valuable life insurance during his working years at a very low cost. Remember, all they're having to pay is the tax on the imputed loan interest. And by the way, I didn't mention this, but I assumed a 15 basis point increase on the interest each year. So I didn't assume that it stayed level. An employee had net cash value above premiums paid available in year 8 and beyond. So even though you could wait to retirement to use this, they would have access to any gains in the policy. Remember, the assignment is only for premiums paid. Out-of-pocket cost is tax on imputed interest only. And on this example, remember, $25,000 paid for the employee versus $279,000 in cash available after loan was repaid. If they had just over 20 years, that's $1,257 on average. If you leveled it, if you created a level payment stream over 20 years, in order to produce $279,000 in cash over those 20 years with a $1,257 payment, it would have to be a 19.96% internal rate of return. So I did the math on that. Almost 20% rate of return they'd have to get that type of return. So great incentive for the employee to stay with that company. So now that we covered the loan regime example and why it could make sense, let's talk about endorsement split dollar. So here we have a 50-year-old female key employee is already part of deferred compensation with the company, but they're looking to get some additional life insurance. Now, there could be group term, but for some of these smaller companies, do you want to provide it for all your employees, or do you just want to provide it for this one key employee? In this case, they just want to provide it for the one key employee. And so they enter into a split dollar endorsement agreement where employer will own the policy and $500,000 of a $750,000 death benefit will be endorsed to the key employee's beneficiary, with the remaining $250,000 as key man insurance. So a cool way to structure it there, $500,000 as an executive benefit to the key employee's beneficiary, $250,000 as key man, and recouping costs, premiums paid. So employees' costs will be either the PS58 government rates, which are way less than any term policy that you can buy out in the market, or one-year term costs, which are even less than the PS58 rates. I worked at Lincoln, and we had our own one-year term costs, and they're always noticeably less than the PS58, especially at later ages. So let's look at this in action. So we have again, $750,000 death benefit, $500,000 to the employee, $250,000 to the employer, and you can see the after-tax outlay is the tax on the one-year term costs. So after 20 years, that we might consider that retirement age. They retire a little bit older than normal. You could see a total of $61.75 paid by the employee. And at that point, the employer could keep the policy, continuing to recoup what they want to recoup, the $250, or they could choose to roll out the policy, but the employee would be responsible to either pay back the premiums paid, pretty costly, or the employer could choose to forgive that amount, which would be fully taxable. So, that's probably less common with endorsement. It's probably more common for the employer to just keep the policy and the employee just retires. And at that point, they have to continue paying tax on the PS 58 or 1-year term costs. So what did the employer receive here? Well, they received the retention of the key employee. And after the employee retires, they have the flexibility to either keep the policy, have employee buyout policy, or bonus the policy, in which case they'd get a tax deduction. So, everybody wins here. What did the employee receive? They paid a total of $61.75 for 20 years of $500,000 in coverage. And just so you know, I ran the most competitive term premiums for the same 50-year-old at preferred, mind you, for 20 years, and it would be $798 annually for a total cost of $15,960 over the 20 years. So you're paying almost triple, well more than double, by buying your own policy. So you can see the benefit there cost-wise. An employee has the option of also keeping the permanent policy after retirement. So let's recap on the two split dollar strategies that we covered. So we've seen how split dollar works and how it can be used for an executive benefit strategy. So this presentation is by no means to say that split dollar is a one-size-fits-all strategy. It's not going to work for every executive benefit case you come across. However, understanding how it works and what target market it fits in is definitely going to be helpful in determining which of your clients might benefit from the strategy. Most likely, this is going to work for successful, small to medium-sized businesses that have a carved-out group of key employees that need more than just qualified plans. Typically, you'll want at least a 7 to 10-year time horizon before retirement to allow time for accumulation. Also, this can work great for employers and employees who appreciate the tax advantages of life insurance. Remember, deferred comp, the life insurance is irrelevant to the key employee. They just know they're getting a taxable benefit, taxable death benefit if they die. Here, they're going to get tax-free income, so you're leveraging up those dollars. And deferred comp and executive bonus should still be considered. They could still definitely make sense in numerous situations. So, specifically, you might want to look for employees of these small businesses who make, $100,000 and above, can't contribute to Roth, so they lack vehicles that they can contribute to due to income limitations. And they're in an industry where recruiting and retaining key employees is of the utmost importance. So here's just that control spectrum once again. Deferred comp gives almost complete control to the employer. Exec bonus gives almost complete control to the employee. And somewhere in the middle, you have the split dollar loan regime. If you're doing it for accumulation, if you're doing it for death benefit protection, you would use the endorsement split dollar in most cases. So with that, I really hope this was beneficial. And I really hope that you reach out, and if you have any potential clients that could fit into this, I'd be happy to run some quotes. I think that's the best way to learn split dollar. Take a real case and let's see how it looks. I appreciate everybody joining this morning. We'll be doing our next webinar the first Wednesday of next month. And I hope everybody has a great day. Thank you very much for joining.